Yeah, so I move the second reading of the Eviction Ban Bill 2022. And I'm sharing time with Deputy Smith, 10 and 10. Minister, the rationale for the Eviction Ban Bill 2022 is as simple as it is urgent. If we do not strengthen and extend the ban on evictions, we are going to see an absolute avalanche of further families, individuals and children into homelessness over the next number of months. That is an unacceptable situation when we already have 11,600 individuals, children in emergency accommodation. We have no more emergency accommodation left, and there are no alternatives for people who are facing eviction where there is no fault on the part of the tenant. And that's what this bill is saying, is where there is no fault on the part of the tenant, where they've paid their rent, where they haven't breached the terms of their lease, there is absolutely no justification for putting those families or those individuals or those children into a situation of being homeless, because there are no alternatives available for them at the moment. Because, whatever you may say about the progress of housing for all, at the moment it has not delivered the public and affordable housing, the security of tenure, the affordable rents that are necessary to provide people with alternatives. Quite the contrary. We have record numbers of people homeless. We have the highest rents we have ever seen in the state. We have the highest house prices we've ever seen in the state. We have about 100,000 families and individuals on housing waiting lists, waiting up to 10 and 20 years. And we have many people who are not even entitled to social housing because they're over the income thresholds, but the delivery of affordable or cost rental is an absolute trickle, nowhere near what is necessary to provide people with alternatives. So against that background, it would be simply shameful to allow, as will happen, thousands more families, individuals and children to end up in emergency accommodation, or worse, homeless without emergency accommodation, when the government has the power to prevent that from happening. And I have to be honest, Minister, I mean, I hear you say, and I've heard successive ministers and Taoiseach and so on saying, we have a policy of preventing people going into homelessness. I don't see that policy. I see absolutely no sign of that policy. And it was only under very, very significant public pressure and a shocking rise in the numbers of people homeless and in emergency accommodation that forced the government in October to introduce a partial ban on evictions. Not a comprehensive ban on no-fault evictions, but one that only covered those where the notice to quit termination date fell within the defined emergency period. And what is pretty shocking about all of this is, it is clear, I hope you understand, but it was absolutely clear when I raised it with the Taoiseach the other day, he doesn't even understand what your moratorium does and doesn't do. I pointed out to him that I was in the district court on Friday with a family who had done nothing wrong, who were being evicted. The landlord, owner of multiple properties, was evicting them, a no-fault eviction where they pay the rent from the home they have lived in all their lives, since the 1950s, with their two teenage children. Single-income family, the husband's worked for a semi-state company all his life, and they were being facing eviction proceedings in the district court. And he said that couldn't be the case because we have an eviction ban. But so he didn't understand what your ban did or didn't do, although we pointed out repeatedly at the time it was introduced. Anybody whose termination date fell before the introduction of your moratorium can and is being evicted, even on no-fault grounds. So what our ban is proposing is that for the duration of the emergency period, 1 year from now, and then reviewed until the emergency situation is over, that there should be a comprehensive ban on all no-fault evictions. Not just on notices to quit where termination dates fall within the period, but on any evictions on a no-fault basis into homelessness while the emergency persists and while there are no alternatives. And let me be clear in spelling out why there are no alternatives. Despite the government crowing all the time about how progress is being made in housing for all and the delivery of public housing, it is a very telling fact that the Housing for All Q4 progress report has no figures on the construction of new council houses, for example. No figures. No figures. OK, well, you can give them. But what we do know is that in the first 2 quarters of last year, there were 0 new council houses built in Dublin. 0. You will say, oh, we delivered social housing, by which you mean HAPS, the AHB bought some properties and so on, but not actually building council houses. You go on about the LDA. The LDA has not delivered 1 single new public or affordable house. Not 1. The first development where it will deliver is in my constituency. And my God, does that tell a story about the failure of successive Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael governments. We, People Before Profit, very specifically, have been campaigning for that site to be developed for public and affordable housing for 15 years, since it was handed over as the old Shangana open prison to the local authority. For 15 years. And the first sod was turned this year. And the first house will be delivered sometime probably towards the end of 2024. That will be the first LDA house. So that is the level of progress from the LDA. On affordable housing, Housing for All promised 4,100 affordable and cost rental houses in 2022. At the end of Q2 2022, you had delivered 235 affordable houses, 234 cost rental houses. So it is absolutely pathetic. In total, in the entire country, by the end of the second quarter of 2022, only 1,500 new local authority bills had been delivered. Now, what is the human cost of all of this, of your failure to take emergency measures? A couple who had a HAP tenancy are paying €2,700 in rent in a HAP arrangement, a massive top-up, but was sustainable, yeah, because so many people are doing top-ups, right, because they can't get anywhere else. When the husband was working, they could manage that top-up. But then he got early onset Alzheimer's. And so he's not working anymore, and they don't have the means to pay the top-up on this extraordinary rent. So now they are €2,700 in arrears. If those arrears persist, they will face eviction. Imagine that. Somebody with Alzheimer's, wife is his carer, what are you going to do about it? Or the family I mentioned, who were over the threshold, facing the imminent prospect with their 2 kids, and I've raised this case so many times, and we talked to the local authority. Can the state acquire properties to stop people going into homelessness where they're facing the imminent threat of eviction, even if they are over the threshold? And we're told by the local authorities, no, sorry, we can't do that. Crowdfunding, no, we can't do it. Now, why would you not step in to prevent somebody being homeless in that situation? Or another young woman who's been 4 years with her teenage child in 1 bedroom in emergency accommodation. 4 years. She works for a semi-state body, by the way, looking after vulnerable children. And she's still homeless. 4 years on. OK, so to conclude, You can't let more people go into that situation. You have to take action. There are many more things you have to do. This isn't the solution to everything, but it is an absolutely urgent stopgap to stop a dire situation getting even worse in the coming months.